What are some of the trends in gardening right now? And I have a feeling some of these trends just become standard. I mean,
Mm.
for a long time, it seemed like organic gardening was a trend, but it seems like that's just the way it is now. Everybody's kind of seems to have gotten on board with that. And I know, at least in California, kind of local native
Mm.
landscaping, and not so much with the edible gardening, but rest of the gardening seems to be very popular.
Yeah, you're right. I think the organic thing, that's the way most people garden now. I don't think not a lot of people that I notice at least are like using synthetic fertilizers,
Yeah.
spraying their plants all the time. So maybe, yeah, I guess it has kind of faded into the norm. The native plant thing, you're right. In San Diego, especially, because in Cali, it's mostly just a water issue, you know?
Right.
Like lawns in California are very expensive to run. And so the native thing is big, but that's big everywhere. It's just probably a little bigger here because it makes way more sense here. You get a lot of rain in a different climate, you can grow a lot more and you don't have to be as, conservative. I mean, houseplants have been big for a long time. Houseplants got really big in the pandemic because obviously people wanted the green and the mental health and all that. I think what I hope to be a trend coming forward is a home production gardener. So like not someone who's growing a couple things of basil, but not like a market farmer. Someone in the middle who's like, I'm going to try to grow like 20% of all the food I eat, given the space I have, because most people can't get to 100%.
Right.
But yeah, that's what I think is we're going towards. It kind of feels that way.
What are microgreens?
So when you start a seed, right, the seed sprouts and you have the seed leaves that come out, and then you have like the first set of what we call the true leaves. They look different. They look like the actual leaf of the plant. That's where you harvest a microgreen and you sow them very, very densely together. So you get like sort of this mat of greens. And yeah, I had a business in 2014 growing and selling microgreens to restaurants in San Diego. And it was, it was short lived. It was just kind of a test little thing. But yeah, microgreens are one of the better things you can grow. Like, let's say you're an apartment grower and you kind of want to do something edible. There's not a whole lot of options for you besides that, unless you have like a really nice sunny balcony, So microgreens indoors is a fantastic way to do it because you can make like these little micro salads, really easy to grow, pretty cheap to grow. So it's a nice one.
How much of what you grow is flowers versus edibles? Because I know I think you started out in really strong in the edible space.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, are you moving more into flowers? I got into gardening last year, quite like a bunch of people. I did a mix last year I did some cut flowers and I did some fruits and veggies. I love cut flowers, so I'm going to go 100% cut flower this year.
I'm actually with you on this.
Flowers.
Yeah, I think my flower love has definitely grown. Because I guess like in the beginning I was just like, if it's not edible, what's the point? And that was actually a kind of a dumb philosophy. Just if you look at how ecology works, it just doesn't make sense. And you want to create an environment in your garden where it sort of manages itself, and pollinators and flowers, and that is a big part of that. But yeah, I've really gotten into them, and I actually was thinking about doing a cut flower garden, like a little micro garden, doing that. For now, I'm doing a lot of like relatively easy flowers. Like I'm doing sunflowers, borage, zinnias, calendulas, these types of things. You could use them as cut flowers for sure, but I'm not. Oh, I'm doing roses for my first time this year too.
Oh.
And so I'm trying to kind of, I just think it's cool, like you.
It is.
But it is sort of unconventional, I guess, to see like two dudes growing cut flowers, and which I think is cool. Like I think that's nice. Because if I do it casually, I guess, and not like make a big deal out of it and just think that it's interesting, I think you can break the mold of like only girls do this or whatever. And just get more people doing it.
I felt so good when I was in the garden, like being around flowers versus just being around plants and just kind of like some of the other stuff. And I find that most people, when I told them that, I was like, oh, I have a bunch of raised, garden beds in the back. And they'd be like, what are you growing? What are you eating? What are you growing? It's like, no, it's actually flowers. I'm really into dahlias right now. And you're right. Yeah. Like people are like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Right. Because they look at you and they just don't think. They're like, every other obsessed flower person I know doesn't look like Chad, Right. And so you pattern interrupt their brain a little bit. And it's kind of interesting. And I think, because what's weird is in my industry, I'm an outlier demographically, right? Whereas like my cousin who has a fishing YouTube channel, he's 33-year-old guy. So it kind of makes sense. So I think what's interesting is just covering stuff the way I approach it versus maybe a more traditional looking or appearing gardener. It attracts a different type of person who maybe wouldn't have done it otherwise, I think there's something to that.
I did the same thing. We moved into this place. I got really into growing flowers, cut flowers, learning how to actually do flower arrangements in vases and that sort of thing. That's when I really learned the difference between perennials and annuals when it comes to flowers. And if you really want that pop of color, wow, nothing beats the annuals, you know.
It's hard, man. It's hard. Yeah. Yeah. I've been obsessed with, there's a couple flower growers on Instagram and YouTube that are doing it as a proper business. And it's fascinating it's just a totally different thing.
Do you have any places to go for inspiration? I know for me, it was literally Disneyland. Some of their flower gardens there are unbelievable. And just the way the hanging baskets are just packed with flowers and they come out the sides. And it's really cool.
Oh, Disney actually has amazing hydroponic gardens as well. But yeah, I mean, there's some great botanic gardens in San Diego. For me, because I still am more interested in edibles, like seeing a farm is really interesting to me. All these different market farms. I think San Diego has the most small farms per capita of any city. So there's a lot of opportunity to see that kind of stuff. And honestly, I just kind of browse around on like Pinterest or YouTube, and I just suck up every idea that I can and sort of mishmash them in my head and try to apply them to my space. And so that's where I get a lot of the inspo, or just from the audience, like, hey, have you thought about doing this? Like someone will send me some idea that I didn't think of.